Hello and welcome to Ginger Prime. My name is Brian, and Graphics by Sage, the editor for Bellular, tweeted out the latest video, No King Rules Forever, and asks, who's going to react first? Work to Game or Asmongold? And I think, honestly, I probably Work to Game is going to take it. So we'll see here who ends up posting this video first. It is a 30-minute video, so guys, be sure to buckle up. We're going to do just one video. I got some feedback that y'all didn't like it broken up all last time. So guys, if you're new here and you want to help me get to my first goal at 50,000 subscribers by 2021, I was giving that information out on stream the other day, and apparently by letting you guys know my goals here on the channel, you were more than happy to subscribe. So we had our highest subscription day ever just yesterday. But anyway, Graphics by Sage, thanks for tweeting this out. Honestly, I'm really excited to see and have been enjoying Bellular's coverage of Final Fantasy XIV a lot. I think it's really important. It asks and brings out a lot of different questions, and this is something that both from a video game perspective with Final Fantasy XIV taking the top spot, especially among mindshare, among all of us players, but more than anything else, like what does it look like when a big-time creator around one game decides to cover more than one game itself? So I don't know what he says here. Like, this is my raw reaction to it. We will, like I did last time, if he gets too heavy into the WoW stuff that I just can't add anything of context to, I'll cut that out, so you'll be able to hopefully have a good viewing experience. His video is sponsored, and I'll make sure I include a link in the description. As with any reaction, news coverage, things like that we do here on the channel, be sure to go give the source some love. They're putting out the content. This is hopefully to add some context for a lot of Final Fantasy players, to add context as a content creator, to share my utmost excitement, because I've been a fan of Bellular and his work for a long time, despite not being a World of Warcraft player. So hopefully you guys seem to really enjoy these reactions. I'm going to try to keep them and limit it to no more than one a week overall, because if you're new here and this is the video you're finding, I'm not a reaction channel, but sometimes it's exciting to sit down and talk about these things. So that's a long enough intro, guys. You can skip to any chapter markers in the description if you need, but let's go ahead and get started.
Right? We usually talk about it in a bit of a bubble, don't we? Because we talk about what is WoW doing right? What is WoW doing wrong? How are we, the players, reacting? And so on and so forth, off in our own little bubble, in our own little corner of the internet. But what, as a community, we rarely address is how external factors impact World of Warcraft.
Okay, so just kind of touching on the external factors, I've seen a lot of content creators, honestly, just some of the best ones. I'll try to include links in the description, because if I start rattling them off, it just ends up being a long list. So guys, check out the description for some awesome content creators. But talking about like the state of MMORPGs and the genre itself, these games are beloved genre outside of what your preferred MMO is, don't exist in a bubble, and Game Pass is a huge factor in competition. If you think of Game Pass almost like a theme park MMORPG, it has lots of attractions coming in at the same monthly price as an MMORPG. I think if nothing else, when we talk about the bubble of the video game industry, a lot of moving factors, a lot of moving parts, so it's easy to kind of hone in on the one thing maybe we don't like about a specific game. But at the end of the day, yeah, it could be also very varying external factors that play into it, whether it's competition in the industry, our own lives, the world at the state of the world in many different ways. So anyway, I just thought that's something I've always kind of been toying around with, and hopefully comes across in my videos, but we'll have to wait and see. So that being said, there was another thought I had and I totally forgot it. So we're just going to roll on with it.
How the world and the other games.
Oh yeah, and Graphics by Sage is what I was going to say. Awesome job on the editing, by the way. We'll go ahead and continue.
In it, threaten or inspire World of Warcraft.
Okay.
Because we're in a time where even though COVID drove people to gaming, Blizzard still lost monthly active users. So I'm here to say.
Well, I mean, the question I would have is that, yes, we've known the numbers have dropped after Shadowlands. I would say that isn't just indicative of World of Warcraft. It's something that happens with any natural hype train. Now, the question is that with the gap, we just see a ton of WoW refugees, not just into Final Fantasy XIV. This is into gaming overall, and I think this is one of the weaknesses I've continued to espouse about the theme park design. that's going to have to be for another video, because I could spend all day talking about the theme park design in the case of World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, but what COVID really taught us over this last year. And the answer is, at its core, is content is king. Shadowlands brought people into the game. I went and played Shadowlands, and then I was out. I was like, okay, I've seen enough. And that's just me. And I only speak to myself on
Say this. Blizzard have got to stop ignoring their competition. And with today's sponsor, NordVPN.com.
All right, yeah. NordVPN, guys. Not sponsored here. Bellular sponsored. I'm going to jump on a little bit ahead. But I would ask and wonder, is Blizzard actively ignoring the competition? Yoshi P has a panel. They had an interview with Yoshi P this week, literally going into detail about how he has a team of people informing him of the state of things. He's played WoW with the WoW devs. He has a very close relationship, and he's very he calls himself a fanboy of Blizzard themselves. I don't know. I'm not sitting in the Blizzard team, but when we met with Blizzard people at FanFest, they know who Work the Game is. They know what was going on in Final Fantasy. So I don't know if it's a question of ignoring. I think it's a question of either leadership or just they've got some blocks, or, a lot of internal stuff. Like, that's the thing. I think video games are a miracle because they exist. Because when you get into office politics, BS crap like that, at the end of the day, you're literally just waiting to just try and do your job sometimes. And sometimes there's a block, and it takes a lot of effort, a lot of work to get that rocking and rolling.
Or anything like that, nor can they prioritize some of the sites and traffic that you use over others.
Oh, we're still doing the
sort of thing you don't want your ISP doing.
Oh, it's in the corner. It's in the corner.
Here we Cycle, right?
Okay, there we go.
Wrath of the Lich King. Shadowlands' improvements, World of Warcraft is at one of the most critical points in its history. I really do think that. Since Wrath of the Lich King, expansions have been on a tick-tock cycle, right? For every expansion that has been super well received and has restored people's faith in the game, one has followed up that has in some way tanked WoW's reputation amongst the wider community. Of course,
So what's an interesting contrast to a TikTok, because I've seen that kind of argument even brought into Windows operating systems. Like Windows Vista was a talk, so that when Windows 7 came out, it ended up being a much bigger tick. And honestly, I think that's quite interesting to see overall. When you have that kind of mindset, and maybe there is a case in point to the value of that. However, one of the things I could see that I would describe, Stormblood almost as a talk in this case, but that talk literally being turning into that positive with the latest updates, with Boja finishing off kind of what I felt like was missing out of that expansion. However, if you think about it, building upon itself, the team, especially coming into Shadowlands, really hitting hard. And if Endwalker hits hard as Shadowbringers, or even harder, I think ultimately we're going to see a ton of really exciting things for the future of Final Fantasy. Anyway,
FA was that talk. Shadowlands should have been another
I'm so glad I got the TikTok.
the expansion that would right the wrongs of Battle for Azeroth and restore World of Warcraft to the heights of Legion. So far, that's not happened. It has not.
That's true.
And it's not looking that likely, is it? A second talk, to carry the analogy, it might be more than WoW can actually take.
So on that second talk, notice is that I've put out a video just this week saying, literally what happens after 9.1. If 9.2 is the same kind of gap, 10 months, people are going to be yay, 9.1's here, but then are they going to feel betrayed again? Personally, if we only got 5.1 and then 10 months later 5.2, yeah, that would be horrible. Yoshi P has set a standard for delivery of the content, and that standard is appealing. That standard means that even if you're not actively trying to grind it out, you can always be hey, what's going on over here? Oh, that's great. I'm really excited about that raid. I'm really excited about X, Y, and Z. And then if nothing else, even if you don't want to get on that train of patch cycle between every 2 year, expansion every 2 years, well, guess what? You just what we see with the history of the game, in the 5.5 patch to the 0.1 patch, to the 0.5 to the 0.1, like through the expansion, like that is like a big time for a lot of players who just want to consume the story. And then they just take a break, and that's fine. There's no punishment. There's nothing wrong with them stepping away from the game and playing other games. And Yoshi P has designed the game that way. But he has said himself that he didn't build the game that he wanted to make. He had to look at the WoW model, and essentially what he's improved on, clearly, when we look at Shadowbringers and Shadowlands, is consistency in the content despite the COVID situation.
That's the fear. Because if patch 9.1 and 9.2 don't provide proof of a change in direction, what's going to happen is that Blizzard will find that they have burnt a lot of bridges, that a lot of goodwill will be gone by the time 10.0.
But all Blizzard has to do is deliver really good content. One of the things that gamers tend to go into this, like, I've even seen messages from people literally like, I will never play this game. This game is dead to me. I'm done. And then as soon as the next hype, whatever comes out, oh, I'm back. I'm loving it, etc. Like there's an emotional relationship to be had when the game and the developers aren't showing up. It's like, if you think of it, like take the relationship analogy a little bit, it's easy to be like, yeah, I haven't talked to my girlfriend in 10 months. Like, is she still your girlfriend? I think so. Maybe I should call her. Oh, she's not answering my phone call. And then all of a sudden she shows up at your door and it's like, hey, let's hang out. All right, this is great. But then disappearing again. Something's amiss. Right. So, but then the question from an engineer perspective, if you're a new guy, is like, I'm a software engineer. That's what I do when I'm not making videos. The engineer in my mind says, like, if you're smart, like you're looking at what WoW 2 or WoW New Genesis, and if you guys don't know what that reference is that Phantasy Star just went through this big transition. I think the games as a service model should and need to be evolving. No developer in the current setup at Blizzard needs to sit here and worry about decisions that were made back in 2004 and 2006 and 2008 and 10 and 12. Because it becomes that logistical nightmare. Why can't you put out content? We can't put out content because like it's going to mess with this or this. We can't do the thing the players want that we want to make this game better because decision like it ends up being a bigger deal. Like with a game as big as WoW, like there is no light switch decision. There is no light switch. Oh yeah, let's just go flip it. And turns out it was, it fixed all the problems. And then going further, taking the analogy, is like if it was so easy to do, then why are they putting up guards around it with like armed guards preventing people from making the switch that makes everybody happy? It just doesn't work in development that way. And I wish it did. I literally just had a conversation with a guy who we were talking about something back in January. I was like, we need to start today so that if this error happens again, like we can handle it. We don't have to worry about it. And he was like, nah, it's not worth it. And then calling me today, like, how soon can we fix it? I'm like, maybe by the end of this month. They're like, that's gonna take too long. I was like, find somebody who can do it faster. And then let me learn from that person, because that's just the reality of sometimes that's how everything works. And it sucks.
Rolls around. Right now, Final Fantasy XIV is actively dunking on World of Warcraft.
Yes.
Names in the WoW community are actually engaging with that.
It's been dunking on World of Warcraft for a long time, in my opinion.
Game now, and if they aren't asking about the game, they're playing it. Loads of us are. Even some of us are doing sponsored streams, and that shows a degree of community targeting from Squeenix. Right, of course, when Blizzard is busy spending their time jamming their feet in their mouth over controversial public test realm changes, worries over Classic, the Burning Crusade monetization, and lots more. And while that's going on, Square Enix are basically moving in for the kill.
And I said this at the FanFest announcement when they announced the Oceanic servers, the data center for Oceanic. I go, they're going for the throat for WoW. They want to be the number one. And one of the things that's prevented them is not having every region equally represented. WoW as a global IP, people were like, oh, WoW's still big in China or wherever. Like, I don't care. It doesn't impact me. It does not impact me whatsoever. But the Oceanic, I was like, holy crap, that is a degree of confidence that you love to see from a company.
With a new expansion trailer, a 60% discount to their entire game, that comes with 30 days of game time, and their recent, extremely successful, and shockingly emotional FanFest, they have got a veritable army of happy players who are proudly inviting other people to join their game. They are actively evangelizing. And it's working. It is working. Blizzard are, of course, used to fighting off competition in the market. They released Classic The Burning Crusade on the same day as Elder Scrolls Online's new expansion.
And for those of you who don't know, like, Blizzard does that all the time. Man, I got emotional there for a second. Focus. And the question has been with New World, like, hey, they're going to drop 9.1 at the same time as New World, just in ways that, like, they can do that. Like, a business mind outside of gaming and, like, whatever, like, it's like business minded. It makes sense, right? Because now you're going to have to give a player a choice, because you can't play multiple games at the same time. It's just like you can play and bounce between them, but like they don't want to lose that active user. Like, if you think of the monthly active user, what can we do to keep them just touching the game? Because that is important. That's essentially the number. Nobody really cares. Like, they don't put out active subscription numbers because they want active users. Microsoft's the same way. The industry has shifted in that, and some people still hold on to, like, we want the hard numbers. No one's releasing them. No one's going to get them. Good luck, go nuts. We can only infer from engagement and many other things that give us that temperature reading more than anything else.
As an example, that's, of course, despite players complaining about it being too soon. About the pre-patch not being long enough. They knew people wouldn't like that, but they clearly knew, or at least in their own heads, that ESO had to be fought. Back in 2016, they practically killed the hero shooter Battleborn with the timing of Overwatch's beta. And World of Warcraft patches and release dates.
I couldn't do Battleborn. Like, just to speak on that, I tried, and I was just so disappointed. I'm just not a MOBA guy. Wish it was. I'm just not. And Battleborn was just all the wrong things for all the reasons. I talked to some of my friends over Gearbox. That was a good conversation. Maybe we'll release that someday.
Have intersected with key Final Fantasy XIV dates in the past to their benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Blizzard, the shoe could very much be on the other foot.
Right.
New World is a new MMO coming out in August. And while Amazon are absolutely shooting themselves in the feet at times regarding monetization,
that is so unfair. Like, just to call it out real quick, yes, like from a gaming perspective, yes, but they announced their store over a year ago. WoW has a cat. Like, monetization is not wrong. It has to be married with trust. And you can't trust Amazon because they've given you no reason to trust them. However, trust over time gets established. Final Fantasy XIV did not launch ARR with a cash shop, but it did eventually bring one in. Now, you really don't see it, right? But we trust the developer, and the developer gives us that reason. When you start losing that trust, then monetization, doesn't matter what they're selling, starts to go like, wait a minute, this is wrong. So that's like, I get the gaming perception of Amazon, but they're not actively shooting themselves in the foot outside of the fact that they have to establish trust in the game. And I think essentially what would have been a better, well-received mindset is to have players play the game. You've talked about the cash shop, and then it's like, hey, we're not launching with one. We want to really let players experience the game without fear of that they're going to be, over monetized. And we're thinking of just cosmetics, but we want to make that an active conversation. I think Amazon's doing a decent job at having that conversation, but we don't know if it's going to be good. We'll find out, but we won't know even on day one. We'll know in a year and in 2 years. Trust, it takes time. You don't immediately trust like a game dev. Maybe you do. Maybe I'm just jaded.
There's no small amount of hype for that game, and yes, even from some of the WoW community. We've got Ashes of Creation, another major game for the WoW community. They actually moved their alpha start date away from the Burning Crusade's launch.
Good choice.
But that's a game with loads of attention from the WoW community. Then, of course, you've got Elder Scrolls Online, which has just slowly been building momentum and adding to the game over many years, with just about everything that I hear recently being pretty positive. There may have been claims of WoW killers, like Wildstar coming in the past.
What a curse. Like, nothing is a killer. Putting that on any game is like dooming that game. Oh, it's going to be this. That's where I start to see that layer applied to Ashes. I want Ashes to be amazing. I'm looking forward to playing it. But like, no. I think as somebody said it, like the true WoW killer was WoW itself. And yeah, that's why I think the title of this video, No King Rules Forever, is appropriate.
Past. But none of those WoW killers were successful, right? But none of them came around at the same time that Blizzard, well, acted as badly as they do now.
Mm-hmm.
None of them had a Blizzard that was its own worst enemy, to the degree that Blizzard right now is its own worst enemy. Look, this is not going to be an emotionally driven takedown of the game, and I do not intend for this to be some sort of unwarranted negativity. But we can't run from what's going on. We have to accept reality and deal with it.
Yeah.
There's no amount of burying our head in the sands and pretending that it's all going to be okay that's actually going to help, that will be useful, that will have utility. So we're going to engage with this, what's really happening. There are the concerns that the community has got with WoW right now. The development team does not seem to care about what players want.
I get that from a feeling perspective. I just think that implies so many unknowns, right? Could very well be true. You know, it definitely feels true. But I like beyond the curtain, right? Like if a dev came out and said that, I'd be like, holy crap. The community saying that's important, and it's unfortunate that they're not feeling heard. And I don't know how to fix that. If that's a PR issue, if that's a sit down, I don't know. Because like I know that I watched the Preach interview with Ian, and yeah, at the core of it, it's like it just felt disconnected. And afterward, everybody's like, that just doesn't feel like they're in the same world. And the question is are we all disconnected? You know, I always try to look at myself, put myself in the situation. Like, am I really the voice? Am I representative of the majority of viewpoint? Often I'm not. And that's okay. Like, there's not many, dads of 5 kids out there playing MMORPGs. There are dads out there, and I think we definitely bond. Hopefully we'll bond. Maybe at FanFest this year. Next time we have a FanFest, let's have a drink. Jeez. But yeah, anyway, we'll continue.
If people are offering free labor as testers, at least make use of it. Because the current blue posts that they do put up in the 9.1 PTR are woeful in comparison to what they used to do in the past. As it stands, we don't get anything from Blizzard, actually, overall, that is not passed through corporate public relations, or is delivered by an individual who very much seems like they've been trained for PR. Basically, they rarely feel real.
So what's interesting about this is a contrast to what Final Fantasy XIV's doing, and I'm wondering if Felix going to jump into this here in the video, but at its core, like, we get 2 live letters per like every expansion. So we know that's going to happen at 2 different points within the time. Now, outside the expansion area, we've got a couple things happening like that, where we'll have the media tour, some other events, live letters to kind of cover in more detail about the, Endwalker expansion. All right, let's fast forward a little bit. So we get a regular cadence of that, and we get it directly from the producer, Yoshi P himself. And yes, it's in Japanese, but then we have a dedicated community, and then they go and take the Japanese and officially translate it a couple days later. But by that point, pretty much everybody gets the gist of what's going down. And the fact that a Japanese company is communicating as well as it is, and Blizzard, an American company, is not, is something I think to be really concerned about.
There's then the conduit energy problem. Even though conduit energy doesn't matter to most of us, in principle, there is a big issue here. We need to start talking not about the symptoms of problems. We need to start talking about principles. Moving on, there is the feeling that our time is not respected with World of Warcraft. And it's obvious.
Chris and I just talked about this over on Work to Game. If you guys want to check out that video, it should be actually today's. So I'm assuming as this video is up today, you can go check out Work to Game's video today. Very interesting discussion. Anyway.
It'll be 7 whole months since Shadowlands has got any content. That's $105 of subscription fee on top of the actual purchase price of the game. That ain't looking like a good deal. Your 6-month sub that came with a mount or whatever will have expired by patch 9.1's launch. And of course, when 9.1 comes around, they'll almost certainly try to sell you on another 6-month bundle.
I love mounts. I love mounts, and like I said at the top of this video, content is king. I think 9.1, no matter what, even when tied to a mount with the 6-month sub, like that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to tap in and basically, in a way, the way I kind of look at it is like they're kind of just mining their hardcore fans of all the sunk in costs that they've already committed to. So it's going to take a lot of effort. A lot of effort in which that some people have described it to me like a divorce, like going and leaving WoW and actually leaving WoW, not like, well, I'm going to vacation over in ESO or Final Fantasy or insert X, Y, and Z game. That being like, yeah, everybody kind of vacations and checks out other games, but to actually say like, yeah, I'm done. I'm going to leave all the money and time and investment that I've made. What makes it easier to do that is that when that community, those friends that you're playing with, that you love and adore, come along with you. And that's, I think, one of the things that we're seeing happen more and more is it's not just you're just vacationing over here. It's like, no, this is going to be our new home. I talked about this in another video. What is your home? What is your home MMORPG? And for me, it's Final Fantasy. That's 11 and 14. Like that's my background and pedigree. And 11 is actually starting to put out content again, interestingly enough. 14 has been delivering that content. And yes, there's been some changes due to COVID, but I know I'm getting an expansion this year. I know that even after 9.1 drops, I've got expansion hype this year. And it's accessible in more ways than not. Like, even though WoW did add finally controller support, which made it easier to play, I can play 14 on a controller, on a PC, on a console. Hopefully, on more places. We'll find out. Who knows? But yeah, anyway. Yeah, I bet that sucks, right? Like, oh man, my sub just expired and now I have to resub for 9.1 and now they're going to offer a new mount. That's going to have to be an individual personal choice. You're going to have to make the decision for yourself on where you want to spend the money, and don't let FOMO like that sucks. I think FOMO in video games is bullcrap.
I don't see much effort being put into it. Where is the design? Where is the love, the fun mechanics? Surely we get to have more than just doing the same dungeons again and again and again, but maybe with a seasonal affix. Where's the next level solution that improves the player experience and not just the metrics? I don't know where it is, they don't.
I think to speak on this, when we talk about the concept of the bubble, there has been innovation and change. Like I even have said, what is an MMO? Like I've said that in the context of we've seen like games like like battle royales with 100 players like constitute that. They're not MMOs like in your traditional MMORPG sense. So my question from a technological perspective and a future looking perspective is that what will define that? What will define that for the next 10 years, the next 20 years? And that's essentially kind of what I've always wondered with WoW, right? Like with World of Warcraft, with Final Fantasy XIV, speculation that with like 7.0, with 14, that like engine shifting and we're going to like, okay, here's this next saga and this next chapter and they're connected. And, there's this like cohesive, we've solved the problem of these long running games, And so I honestly wonder, like, if WoW tried to launch a new MMO and it turned into Overwatch, right? So not WoW, but Blizzard tried to launch a new MMO, and they found the fun there. Like the question that I think people are having deep down, the theme of this video is somewhat like skirting around, or at least the subtext of all this is that is Blizzard even Blizzard, or are they really fully transitioned over into Activision? Activision just wants its put out the content on the air. I've been playing Call of Duty, or I was for a little bit with the friends, and it was buggy as all get out. And it's $1 billion franchise, but they don't give a shit. Excuse my French. They don't. Spend your money, buy your cosmetics. Here it is every year, and you're gonna do it because we told you to dance. Yeah, I think the subtext right here is Blizzard even Blizzard anymore?
Remember how awesome the concept of time walking was? Think about what it's been reduced to. I mean, come on. Time walking is lazily scaled, it's often broken, but it's obviously got so much potential. WoW's turning 17 years old this year, but we're still stuck playing only Shadowlands, instead of, actually having proper ways to engage with the game's whole history and body of content. It's such a shame. Now, I've deliberately avoided doing the positives thus far, because honestly, the positives are not what we're talking about today. WoW has got an incredible history, tons of fantastic content, and for many it does remain an engaging experience in the high-end content, and perhaps for the casual dabbling as well. All that is important is that Blizzard needs to take a step back and reevaluate. Because while they have been trying their best, but faltering unacceptably, their competition has not been doing so.
So before he jumps into the competition and what he's about to say next, I want to kind of talk about the only way that really happens, I think, based off of what I've seen and talked with Chris about, what we've covered with Blizzard about. And I would say that the only really way that happens is numbers, metrics, analytics. When they talk about like losing subscribers, Blizzard's like, yeah, we lost subscribers, but we made more money. I've even seen in a video from Asmongold talking about that. Like, they want to keep the people who want to pay them, right? That's who has to change, right? That's who needs to be targeted. The whales that are fumbling this game and moving them into other entities. That's hard because, like, if you spend a lot of money, it's hard to walk away from that, right? You're kind of, you're pot committed. Like, this is my game. These are my people. Like, I've bought everything that, because I'm a fan. I love it. This is my, my girlfriend. That relationship, my boyfriend, in that regards.
Especially Final Fantasy.
Yes!
So let's go.
Let's go. Final Fantasy XIV, baby!
This is the only other MMO that we've got recent experience with on the team. But it's also the one that everyone's talking about right now.
That's right.
We'll leave the story of how Final Fantasy XIV became a talking point so quickly. We'll leave that for another day, and we'll just talk about the game.
Oh, I love that
And
music.
to cut a long story short, our World of Warcraft guild has been threatened by FF, because most of them are just enjoying it way more. And this is the case for many, many out there. There's a wave happening right now.
The wave.
While I go through this, think about what I just said in the WoW section of this video. These games are very, very different, yes. But the stuff that I'm going to talk about here, this does apply apples to apples as far as player experience goes.
Yoshi P used WoW as its mentor, its model, so that it would be something that was both inviting, but also different enough, right? It's a Final Fantasy game at its core. It has a story. It has a narrative. It's got, it's got Final Fantasy elements. So you're not sitting here going like, this is just another WoW clone. But you have to speak a common language. If you're going to get Bellular and WoW players to come play your game, you don't want to sit here and say, well, you call it the letter A here, but over here it's the letter V, right? To move. Like, why would, you have a common language so that people can easily find, and then the differences they can figure out, as opposed to having it like this vast mystery. I've played, and even back in 1.0, like, the language of movement and how you played the game on keyboard was different. And that made it very, very difficult for somebody saying, oh, I'll go see what they're doing, and then literally not know how to play the game from the start. And that's a key aspect. And that's one of the things that, it does. 14 isn't trying to be WoW, but 14 knows WoW.
Player experience is the key bit. I think the bit Blizzard forgets. Gear is simple. The vast majority of it comes via tokens that you can trade for whatever job gear that you want. You can also buy with currency. Older gear with uncapped currency and newer gear with weekly capped currency. That's justice and valor points. Yes, it still works. Crafters who are level 80 and have good gear/skill can make a form of catch-up gear to get you into the current content a little bit quicker. The only weekly lockouts that exist in FF are on the last released content, so basically anything that's not current is actually just farmable. The harder difficulty then drops usable coffers that any job can use, which is basically a bit like old tier tokens but with no restrictions. And then progression gear is rarely wasted as a result. Also, there's Master Loot for full pre-mades. So basically, do content, get gear. Very simple. In FF, then, alt-friendliness is the default, because you can play every job. By the way, jobs are analogous to classes. You can.
So what's interesting here, though, it is friendly, but if you want to maximize, you do have to actually run real alts, as opposed to like playing multiple jobs on the same character, where that weekly lockout, like if you're trying to be current across multiple roles, it requires more of the player, but that's an option. That's an option of the player who wants to have that experience. If you want to just play multiple classes, jobs on the same character, and a lot of it shares gear. That gear sharing is quite helpful outside of a few classes jobs. That obviously, like if you want to go more spell speed over crit, like Red Mage doesn't need spell speed. They got that instacast, but you want, but you're going to want that on your Black Mage. So there are some differences where that somewhat kind of has to change, and maybe that will change as more expansions, come out in the future.
You can play every job on one character, and gear is largely shared across some roles except for weapons. So if you are a ranged DPS, caster, healer, or tank, you can actually use the same gear on any other job in the same role. Melee is restricted due to aesthetic differences, but simply put here, very often, the only barrier to changing up your gameplay by moving into a new spec or class, whatever, it is actually just leveling that job up and playing it. That's it. This game is so goddamn alt-friendly, it's insane. Because it's not really alt-friendliness, it's doing what you want in your character. Mm-hmm. Now, to say that these aspects of the game respect your time investment, that is putting things lightly. There's no trash in normal raids, and there's only some trash in alliance raids, which are like harder ones. At the same.
Interesting, because I've long wished that we had, I really enjoyed Delibram Renegade because it felt more like a raid as opposed to like Eden, which feels more like Trials, just leveled up a little bit more in terms of its difficulty. But, honestly, it's really interesting to get that perspective from Bellular in this case for that very reason. Because if players are coming in and actually enjoy that aspect, that's fantastic. That's excellent to see. I'm seeing the followers and the subscribers over on Twitch. Thanks, guys. You're amazing. All right. Anyway, let's go back into it.
Same time, it's an MMO with tons of stuff to do, so I'm going to repurpose an Asmongold quote here. Final Fantasy is a game that makes you want to waste your time. How? Well, relic weapons that you can upgrade over an expansion via quests.
Yeah, Desperate's getting referenced.
Proper grinds, but mostly gorgeous appearances. There are hunts. Basically, elite rare spawns for XP plus endgame rewards. There's then player and guild housing. Here's our free company's house as an example. It's really cool. It also plays Nier music, which you can earn from the raid. Cool. There's also gathering and crafting. 11 separate full jobs in total, each with their own gear, rotations, design, all that stuff, relic, tools, and quests. There are then usually a few other bits of content per expansion, like the roguelite dungeon-crawling Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High, the Bozjan Southern Front with its own progression and abilities, and the grindfest that is Eureka, also with its own progression system.
But I like the name, Eureka.
There's so much to do. There's also all the character customization with appearances and dyes. The fact that you can unlock emotes and hairstyles from events and content, the gold saucer casino that's full of minigames, and so much more. And I've not even talked about the well over 100 hours of single-player main story quest content, which, by the way, people say is, especially when you get into the expansions, literally the best JRPG in the last decade.
So yeah, I would say definitely from a Final Fantasy perspective, absolutely. That would be a counter argument to wasting time in the regards, because that story is the gate within the game. So like for a new player coming in who has never experienced it, it can be an intimidation factor. I highly encourage that you don't let that be the thing that keeps you away from the game, because you also have New Game Plus. So if it's something that's like, I'm just trying to catch up to my friends, note that like when you're not actively raiding or playing with your friends, you do have the New Game Plus that you can actually use to go back and actually catch up on the story that you might miss. It's an excellent tool, genius tool. I wish they would extend it a little bit to add a little bit of experience, personally speaking. to like when you're playing through your alts, but you know, that's neither here nor there.
There is then the fact that each job has got its own quest lines. There's also how fantastic the raid storylines are. And then there's also how the community love the developers for their openness and how much fun they actually seem to have during their communications. I mean, actually, that's most of it. The community actually loves and trusts the developers. And it's no secret why. Also, almost all of the game's content is relevant to the overall experience, both in terms of story and in-game, because of the duty roulettes. Essentially, time walking baked in by default that scales well and offers currency and XP rewards. Square Enix have spent the last 10 years, since Final Fantasy XIV's literal calamity of a launch, building and improving in the game, listening to the players. So that when you log in, you have got 10 years of great game to play. Because FF does not throw the old stuff in the bin in the same way that WoW does. And you know what's really funny? The savior of this project, Yoshi P, he forced the developers to play World of Warcraft.
That's right.
That's what their homework was when he came in to fix the project. They were playing Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria while they were laying the foundation for Final Fantasy XIV's rebirth. And since, they've just been keeping the same thing in mind, the player. This is even apparent in the Beast Tribes, which are extremely similar to old WoW reps, the good ones, with groups of people who clearly advanced with your help through a widening pool of dailies in one area. Like literally like old WoW reps, the good ones. Through iteration and making changes for the sake of the player's experience, they have created, I think, the best overall MMO on the market. It really does seem to be that. Because right now, in terms of the quality of the story, the quality of the writing, a whole bunch of other things, the content cadence, they're beating Blizzard. And it makes me sad to say that. Because it shouldn't be like this. Blizzard have got the company, they've got the resources. Why is it like this? Now, I'll be honest, Final Fantasy XIV is far from perfect. And it is quite heavily weighted on its single-player storytelling,
which ends up being one of the key factors that a lot of people struggle with. It's one of the things that I'd say, if you're struggling with it, like especially the 30 to 50 range, like that's the gap. That's the wall. And then after that, like all of a sudden it's like, I get it. I like it. Oh, I want more of it. Give me more of it. And yes, it's not perfect. I don't think any game is, but there's always this hope. There's always like with every update, with every expansion, like, oh my gosh, they're reworking PvP for Endwalker, something that's been needed for a long time. And we want them to get it right. Like, I want to spend more time PvPing in the game. And yes, there are people who do, but it's like we played around with it, experimented on ourselves, and basically took healers out of the equation and had a blast with their PvP system. So it tells me that it's possible, and then the goal of the PvP system needs to be getting people into it, not trying to find the times where people want to PvP. It should be ready to go at any point in time. So hopefully we'll see more updates to that. And that's the thing, that developers are listening. And Yoshi P said that he wished he had the budget of WoW. Maybe he can if you and everybody wants to switch.
Which to some people is a massive turnoff. Look, I don't think that the MDI competitors and World First Mythic Raiders are going to go to FF14. And you know what? Good. Because I actually, to be honest with you, I don't think WoW should be made around the MDI and Mythic raiding. Blizzard cares far too much about that super cutting edge stuff that they've basically forgotten they have the whole rest of the game to develop. FF has not made that mistake. It has not forgotten that. Yes.
Interesting. We have tried. Like Final Fantasy has tried, especially with the Feast. They really try to kind of like, how can we be represented in this esports style thing? I think it's important. I just don't think it needs to be the be all end all focus. That's why I think Ultimate is important, but it can't be the only focus for the devs, right? Like you want a buffet, and you want a buffet that essentially can be satisfying for a wide range of players, and that has them coming back. And there's lots of things that can go about that. Other videos are on that, more videos to come in that regards. But yeah.
FF has got its problems too, tons of them, but the thing is that there are not problems that are deep and existential.
That's true.
WoW's problems are deep and existential. And I don't say this to Duncan Blizzard, I say this because I have heard too many stories of abandonment. The amount of people who have jumped ship to Final Fantasy XIV and seemingly never looked back is genuinely shocking. I want WoW to be that good, but Blizzard needs the courage to actually make hard calls. It is time for Blizzard to do what Square Enix did back in 2010, to be honest with themselves about their game and what their decisions are doing to their reputation, and to treat this like the existential company-wide emergency that it absolutely is. Because if not, they're going to be due for a wake-up call in a few years. Because not only will it be Final Fantasy XIV clawing at their heels, you'll have ESO. You'll have those other games that are there right now. But you'll also have New World, which is about to come out.
And Amazon's
and Riot
hungry.
will be coming for them. Riot are doing a big MMO as well. Blizzard may indeed wake up and find that not that many of their 100 million plus users give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
If Blizzard take their competition as seriously as they ought to, we will all be happier for it. Us the players, and Blizzard as well. That is it for today's video.
So, as he wraps up, I'm going to wrap up here. Competition is key to this, right? If Final Fantasy XIV can cause Blizzard to wake up and deliver the game that Blizzard players want, that WoW players want and deserve, then everybody wins, right? If Blizzard can go and do this thing, and then Final Fantasy can learn from that, because they already have. If New World can come out and do this thing, and it turns out like that's what players have been wanting and hungry for, and then other games can say, how does that fit into our world, into our game? There's a concept, though, where in 14, when he talks about the issues, I've talked about this many times, sometimes new systems get layered on top, but they never get integrated into the core foundation of the game itself. That takes a lot of work. To come back and say, hey, yeah, it's been 8 years, it's been 10 years, we want to do this. Okay, well, we can put this on top of the game, but to go through all the expansions and integrate that system throughout can be a challenge. And I think that's one of the things that 14 is literally going to light the world on fire with what is going to be coming down the road. Now, whether that comes in 7.0 or 8.0, I can't be for sure, but I just have that feeling based off of what we've seen in 14 and in the direction, and even the words of Yoshi P himself when he says that at some point the number 14 is not going to make any sense. I think 14, how it is today, is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think where it's going to go is going to be this. They're setting themselves up for like you can't be thinking 2022, right? I would describe Yoshi P as a man who's thinking 2030, 2032, 2042. Like how does this game build, and how do they create such an incredible experience that has like repercussions across the industry? I love what I'm seeing across the industry with Blue Protocol, learning from PSO and Final Fantasy. I love what I'm seeing in the space, and I can't wait to see where MMOs go. I think we're on the cusp of another golden age of the MMORPG. Just depends if a couple things fall into place, and I'm really excited about its future. I really appreciated Bellular's video here. If you're joining at this point, or you've made it all the way to this point, I would love you to sound off in the comments below whether you like pickles. I can't even. I'm stuttering. Dill or sweet. We had that debate over on Work to Game. That way I know whether you made it to this point. But kind of as that final thought, in this, I've cut a couple, chunks out of the video itself. He did go through a lot of like the issues with WoW. I don't have anything really to add to that, and I didn't want you just sitting through me just kind of nodding my head. So hopefully that wasn't too jarring of an experience. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and this reaction. And what I would say as a favor to me, if you did enjoy it, go and watch Zepla and Desperus, and go and watch Preach, and go and watch Bellular, and even Asmongold. Like, I know a lot of people think that he's like this toxic person. Honestly, from everything I've seen from him, he's a pretty rock solid guy. And then they say, oh, but it's his community. Like, the more that we can support in consuming content for Final Fantasy XIV helps Final Fantasy XIV, positive or negative. If somebody has a negative viewpoint out there, go and watch it. It doesn't hurt the game. Like, I think that mindset in and of itself it can be frustrating, because it's like the more that YouTube can recommend, the more streams that people are playing this game overall benefits the game. And that's the appeal. That's the favor I could ask of you if you guys are interested in doing that. Thank you for being here. For Ginger Prime, my name is Brian. For returning subscribers, you are magnificent, beautiful, and amazing. And that's what you get for subscribing. Compliments at some point in the video itself. This is a long one, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hit that like button, share, and clip if there was anything out in it that stood out to you. Anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap up. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in my next one. Until then, take care.